Illinois Central and all that stuff. And when I get there after about 2 or 3 weeks, that I could walk down the road and hear the animals and the things. But before that, I could walk down, I couldn't hear anything. And it was amazing how much it changed my hearing.
Really?
Because you live on a farm, you hear a lot, you know. But that always amazed me that it make that much difference after you've been there for 2 or 3 weeks.
Now, who was it that shook Abraham Lincoln's hand?
That was our great great grandfather.
Barker?
John Barker,
Yeah.
Barker. I had that literature, but I don't have it anymore. But he was a tall, lanky. No, they were hunting down in Galesburg, Illinois, and they ran into this tall, lanky man that was splitting rails for the railroad, and it was with Abe Lincoln. Now you think about that. Now I knew my great grandfather, and the old guy sat there with his great big mustache there, and his cane. And I remembering that touch, but he that hasn't been that long ago where, like, he shook the hand that shook Abe Lincoln's hand, and I shook his hand. That for Christ's sake, that isn't that far long ago.
No, that is interesting.
That is very interesting to the fact that it hasn't been that long. How much have we progressed in that time?
Oh,
Yeah.
My God, the airplanes and the televisions. Hell, we never had television. Well, even on the farm, they never had electricity when I first went there. But they did have one thing they had. They had a crystal radio that they could get the ball games. And they'd sit in front of that crystal radio with, they listened to the ball game. They did the pitch and the run, right field, and all this. And everybody would jump up and scream and all that shit. But they listened to those radios that way.
oh.
And I think my father, because he was minded every time he went to the farm, they always drove back because all the girls that was all the family lived in Chicago when the Depression came. They all migrated to Chicago. All the girls, that Bernice, that Maud, that Burl, everybody with that Navy went to Chicago with their husbands to live. And every summer, they'd try to migrate the 300 miles to go down to the farm to see their grandfather and see their dad and all that stuff. And they they always was trying to go back to it.
So what year was that?
I would say it would have to be about 30, 33, 34, something like that.
Okay.
And it had to be before 34. I couldn't be very old. Hell, I was about 4 or 5 years old at that time. But it's
So they drove?
they drove rickety old car back there.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you another thing down there that when I go down to the farm when I was young, 7, 8 years, 9 years old, they didn't have a car. When you went to town,
Right.
you went to either Downing or you went to Memphis, and when you went to Memphis, you had the wagon and team of horses. It took you all day to get there and all day to go out. It was 10 miles going and 10 miles coming.
To go where?
To go to Memphis,
Really?
Missouri, from Uncle Grover's place. Now he was, like I said, he was an interesting man because when the threshing would come along, he had 6 kids and 3 girls and 3 boys, and they would hook up 6 team of horses for the threshing, and they'd go out and bring in the hay, for the thrash machine or the oats and such like that, and they'd come back and hook up 6 more team of horses for the afternoon and go out with them. But one thing they always did during the noon hour, all of them come in rested.
Yeah.
They rested during the noon, and then they'd start all over again.
And they'd work until dusk?
And they'd work, yeah, up to
It
tell you.
was done.
But I remember that as a kid, they let me, when I got older, that I could take the horses down to the pond and water them. And I'd ride one horse and another horse, a team of horses, and take them down there and water them. And then the horses every once in a while would get out in the pond when I couldn't get them out of there. It's, I didn't know. I was a smart-aleck kid from the city. I knew everything. You don't believe it's just that.
Now, are they the ones that had the
Yeah.
painted horses?
Hmm?
Did they have the paints that are,
Appaloosa or
no,
painted?
painted horse? You know, the spotted ones?
Oh, the Palomino type deal. Not Palomino, but
They call them paints. I think.
Calico.
Yeah.
Something
they
like
had-
that.
they had-
No, they had just a plain old workhorse, except Ross, Reva's husband, one time got rich, and he bought some of those Drysdales. He had two Drysdales.
Oh, wow.
All the neighbors were talking about it. He got these big horses he can't even control. Great big horse, couldn't pull anything, but they always had that. They only had to talk about each other and everything else like that.
Yeah.
And such as that. But Uncle Grover had the three boys that worked and the three girls worked. And when they were, I would say from anywhere from 12 on up, they were all working to do that. And he ran, our grandfather ran the thrashing machine through the area. And they worked the thrashing machine anytime the thrashing machine comes, everybody does this guy's yard, everybody does that guy's farm, and the biggest important thing about it is when you went to the thrashing, when you're doing the thrashing, is the people's farm you went to served the food, and you talk about food.
Oh,
God, no wonder they took a nap. But then they got away from they had to have an old car they would hook up to the thrashing machine and run a conveyor belt, to
Off a
run the
wheel?
thrashing, yeah. And for when they were doing the oats, a lot of times they just come through and cut them, and then you'd go through and stack them by hand, tie them up, tie them,
Right.
tie them. Then they got the combine that went through and stacked them and tied them. But I can remember that they would have oats Uncle Grover was a very talented individual. He could build anything. He had a blacksmith shop and everything. But he made his own combine that would cut the thing, and we'd get out and tie them. And then we'd bring these oats back, and he had a great big tarp, and we put the oats in the middle of them and thrash them by hand. And I think the main purpose was for the seed for the next year, and naturally the hay part always went for feed. But that's how he got his seed for next year. Another thing he did, which I thought was interesting, he raised sugar cane, and he had his own mill, and he had it down by the creek, and he had the horse that goes around, and he shoved his sugar cane in, and he made his own molasses, and you'd have molasses there, and that, he raised the cane and made molasses. And I can remember that, and that amazed me because he did all that. He made all this stuff in his pondry. And
wow.
You always knew the important thing about it. You always knew that before you had breakfast, you had to get the cows in and do the milking, and then separate it. And then you'd turn that damn thing around and around with the separator by hand, the cream, because you sold the cream and the milk went to the hogs. But then you went in and ate breakfast, and you could have fried chicken, eggs, anything, all the way around. They cook those eggs, and they come out there. And it's very interesting. Another thing that they had that was very interesting is there's a little bitty house. It's a little bitty house, I say that now, but at that time it was gigantic. It was a big house when I was there. but it grew.
It grew.
It's
It
strong.
grew.
They hatched their own baby chicks.
Really?
Yeah, they had their eggs, and they would hatch, and they would hatch maybe 500 in the incubators, and they'd hatch them. They had them set up in the living room, and what you consider the living room, the room, and here's all these incubators going there, and they're hatching the eggs, and my job, what I found out that what I do is after they got all the baby chicks out of there. There was a bunch of eggs that didn't produce,
Right.
and here they are, these eggs. And my job was to take them in a bucket and take them down to the creek and get rid of them because they smell like hell. You know, rotten eggs.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I take those eggs down there and throw them at the bank, and boy, just looked like mad. But when
Into
they
the
popped,
creek, into the
some of-
creek.
Some of them, when they popped, they had so much gas in them, they smelled like hell. But they got all these incubators out of there, and they'd end up with, 300 or 400 baby chicks, and then they put them out in the brooding house, and they have a little, they look like a kind of a heater type over them, and then they'd raise them, and then as soon as those chickens got up, were they big enough for fryers, boys, they'd go out there, and Aunt Neve would go out there and grab one of those things by the head, and
Bring it.
and that chicken's running around on his head. And she'd do that for breakfast. You'd have fried chicken for breakfast. They had to eat what they
Yeah.
made.
Wow.
I remember that if they didn't have any yeast for making bread, you had to go next door to get the yeast, and then you get a jar of this yeast, which was nothing more than sour milk, and come back, and that's how they baked their bread. And if you didn't have it, they would borrow it from somebody else, from a neighbor. I used to remember going down the road there, picking this, looked like a jar, bring it back. That's what one of the yeast that died, the bacteria in them. That was interesting,
Yeah.
very interesting. And the swimming in those muddy ponds, oh,
Oh, they were really muddy.
yeah. And
How close was the nearest town?
Crawford, which at one time, they had the railroad come through. And another thing that happened is they worked, Uncle Grover helped put that railroad through when they first did it. I wasn't there at that time, but that's what he did. He helped through. And this hoopie, they called it, it was a one-car train, come from Memphis, come through Crawford and go to Downing, just through the rural community. And Crawford was a little station down there that was probably 3 miles from their farm, uphill down in a little place. But Crawford was a place that you walked in there, and here's this potbelly stove and one store and a loading platform for the train where you took your cream, which you took cream in your 5-gallon container, and you took it there, and they all floated it, and you sold the cream to them because that's where they made the butter and everything. But Crawford was about 2 to 3 miles away, and Downing was 5 miles away, and you could walk to Downing. I've done that. But Memphis was 10 miles away, which was a big place. And the only time you went to Memphis was to get your flour and maybe some seed or something like that. But that was an all-day
Trip.
trip, and you always went on with your on a wagon until they got the cars,
Yeah.
and then they got the old Model A up there, and they didn't have it, but the neighbors had a Model A, and they had it up on top of a hill. And when they got ready to go, they had to push it off the hill to start it.
Started?
Yeah, and that's how they did it. And another thing that they had was interesting was that if it rained, you never drove your car later. You never drove your car out of there because you'd get over there and you'd go in a ditch and you have to get the team of horses to pull this guy out of the ditch and all this stuff. And there's one hill that you could see from their house that Aunt Martha, there's a little old lady that lived up there, and she had a bunch of cats. but she lived halfway up that hill, but your car could not make it up that hill if it was rain, if it had rained. It was so muddy.
Oh,
And you went down and went across the bridge and up the hill. It was very, very interesting as a kid out of Chicago to going up there and seeing all that crap. The only reason why my mother would send me to Chicago, to the farm, was to get me during the summer when I was out of school.
Right.
That's when I went. And Joy used to hate it. She never went. And she hated that. They go down there, and those Aunt Navy's kids would kid her so much. Little Miss Priss and all that stuff. The old man, Uncle Grover would take those 2, 3 boys and out there just wrestle with them and throw them around and that, run around the house and throw them in the rain barrel and all that crap. He was really a cowboy. And they always had that croquet set out there in the middle of the yard, and his thought was to how you croquet a ball. Boy, you haul back and hit that son of a gun, and your ball would go miles away playing croquet. But he was always crazy. That's what they did for entertainment.
wow.
And they always went to church, the campground. That was the church, and you got up the wagon Sunday morning, got the wagon up, and hooked the team of horses up and went there. And usually it was an all-day affair because they usually took the food and they had food at the church.
Isn't that where the cemetery is?
Yeah, that is the cemetery.
Yeah, right.
That's where. Well, we have relatives in probably 2 different cemeteries. The reason why I say that, last time I was there, which was before Reba died, and all the rest of them were gone, and she took me around and showed me the cemetery where all the Barkers were buried, and all the relatives into that area was different. Now, there was
And which town is that in?
that was around Downing.
That's in Downing.
And the campground, which they call a campground, was between, was across the road on the other side of the highway, and it was between Downing and the home. In other words, instead of going that way to Downing, you went that way to the church where they went to church. And that's where you go there, and you had, well, that's where my father was buried, and also there's a grave site there for my mother.
Right. That's
Yeah.
right. I've got pictures of that.
Yeah, I have too. But it was interesting during that period of time.
It was hot during the summers there, wasn't it?
Oh man, it was. That's the reason why they rested. They lay down and rest. There was no air conditioning.
Right.
And they had that cellar, and every time they made the trip to town, Memphis, they always bought a great big chunk of ice, put it down with their bags, the insulation bag, and bring it home, and they made ice cream, of fresh cream. Always had that. They'd have peaches and put in peach ice cream. And they'd sit there, and I'd sit on top of that damn thing, and they just kept turning, the old-fashioned ice cream maker. They'd turn it till you couldn't turn it anymore, and then take it down in the cellar and let it harden. But like I said, the interesting part about with the cellar was that they can all this stuff. Canning was a way of survival, but some of that stuff down there has been there a long time. In the cellar, whenever they butchered, before they got modern and rented a locker in town, that's what everybody did. They take a calf in there and for butcher, and they would go on. The butcher would cut it up and put it in the cold storage, and for about half Shersey for the meat. But they always butchered a hog. And then they would cook down the fat for lard, so they ended up with making their own lard. and then they'd make sauerkraut, not sauerkraut, head cheese, whatever the hell that is, but whatever it is, it was a combination of all the scraps put together.
Yep.
But they always had that, and then after you milked and you separated the milk, you took all the other scraps down there and fed the hogs.
That's what makes good pork.
Yeah, but the hogs were, God, I don't know, but if you've never been around a hog pen, they're smelly as hell. So you never had your hogs next to the house, and you
No.
always had to walk away to get them to the other part of the pasture to get them. But you know, they didn't have much land. They only had 40 acres. And you know, you talk about now with 1,000 acres and all that crap like that. They
Correct.
never had that much. It was all homestead property. What happened is the big landowners come in and bought all these little places, and so they could farm. But that country was not farm country. That was hilly. You didn't have a nice great big field. You planted your corn. You planted your corn on maybe an acre and a half to raise it. And the same way with your wheat. You know, you only planted where it got the rain. You didn't have any irrigation. So you had a good crop or a bad crop. See? All of it was survival. And that's the reason why they lived so damn long. They didn't have all that synthetic stuff.
And they worked hard.
Oh,
Yeah,
did
they
they
kept
work hard?
themselves in shape.
That's from morning to night. Daylight to dark. In fact, you got up in the dark.
Yeah.
You went to bed. But I tell you, when you went to bed, you were tired.
No kidding.
I bet.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I left my bottle in here.
It's
for
too long?
a little long.
And there's another one in
Oh,
there.
it's-
You know,
Maybe I didn't love you quite as often as I could have. And maybe I didn't treat you quite as good as I should have. If I made you feel second best, girl, I'm sorry I was blind. You were always on my mind. You were always on my mind. And maybe I didn't hold you all those lonely, lonely times. And I guess I never told you I'm so happy that you're mine. Little things I should have said and done, I just never took the time. But you were always on my mind. You were always on my mind. Tell me that your sweet love hasn't died. And give Say the things you used to say and make the world go away. Do you remember when you loved me before the world took me astray? If you do, then forgive me and make the world go away. Make the world go away and get it off my shoulders. Say the things you used to say and make the world go away. I'm sorry if I hurt you. I'll make it up day by day. Just say you love me like you used to and make the world go away. Make the world go away and get it off my shoulders. Say the things you used to say and make the world go away. Say the things you used to say and make the world go away. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. On the road again. Just can't wait to get on the road again. The life I love is making music with my friends. I can't wait to get on the road again. On the road again. Going places that I've never been. Seeing things that I may never see again. I can't wait to get on the road again. On the road again. Like a band of gypsies, we go down the highway. We're the best of friends, insisting that the world keep turning our way. And our way is on the road again. I just can't wait to get on the road again. The life I love is making music Georgia, Georgia, the whole day through, just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. Georgia, Georgia, a song of you comes as sweet and clear as moonlight through the pines. Other arms reach out to me, other eyes smile tenderly. Still in peaceful dreams I see the road leads back to you. Georgia, Georgia, no peace I find, just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. Georgia, Georgia, no peace I find, just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. Just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind.